A year ago, we set off on a camping trip in central Queensland. We took the Isis Highway to avoid the busy traffic of the main Bruce Highway, and as we approached a region near Bickerton, we looked to the east and saw an impressive mountain range. Granite cliffs and rocky peaks stood out from the horizon. Looking it up on Google, we found it was Mt Walsh, and we made a plan to revisit the area as soon as we could. Time flies, and it took a year for us to make it back. And this year, on a weekend in late summer, we decided to return. Before we set off, I tried to look into some of the history of Mt Walsh, and I found that there wasn't an awful lot, especially when compared to other areas such as Ninderry and the Glasshouse Mountains on the Sunshine Coast. Nevertheless, we pressed ahead and went to visit this beautiful mountain range as a family on a long-planned, long weekend. We took a 2-hour trip from the Sunshine Coast, and arriving in the afternoon, we set off. Halfway up the mountain, I realised that my backpack, full of camera gear and probably overloaded, was too much. So with thanks to my brother-in-law who helped to carry some of the burden, we made it to the base of the final rocky ascent, just a little too late on dusk. Rain had set in and the surface of the rocks were pretty slippery, so we took shelter and delayed the final ascent until the next day. Mt Walsh was created by volcanic activity a long time ago, during the Triassic period. Over time, erosion has worn away the softer surrounding rock, leaving only the hard granite exposed as the prominent peak that we can see today. The mountain and the surrounding area are part of the traditional lands of the Waka Waka people. Indigenous Australians have lived in the region for thousands of years, using its natural resources for food, tools and shelter. While specific Dreamtime stories about Mt Walsh are not widely recorded, it likely held cultural and spiritual significance. Mt Walsh is named after William Henry Walsh, who first came to the district in 1864 with a few thousand sheep, setting up a life for himself on Debilgo Station, which ended up spanning 500 square miles. William Henry Walsh is thought to be the first white man to have ever climbed the mountain. Recognising its ecological importance, Mt Walsh and the surrounding land were declared a national park in 1947. The park consists of a mix of rainforest, dry eucalypt forest and heathland, providing a habitat for rock wallabies, echidnas, goannas and over 40 species of birds. Today, Mt Walsh is popular for rock climbing, hiking and photography. The summit offers spectacular panoramic views of the Burnett region, but the climb, as we discovered, is very challenging, with a long steep ascent to the base of the final scramble. While there's not a lot of documented information about the Aboriginal history of Mt Walsh, given what we know about the Waka Waka people, some reasonable speculations can be made. Mt Walsh sits within the traditional lands of the Waka Waka, who have lived in the Wide Bay Burnett region for thousands of years. Nearby groups, such as the Butchula and Gubbi Gubbi or Kabi Kabi, have also had connections to the region. Aboriginal people often viewed mountains as sacred sites, sometimes as places of initiation, ceremony or storytelling. While no well-known Dreamtime stories are specifically recorded about Mt Walsh, its sheer size and its striking presence suggest that it may have held spiritual significance. Similar formations across Australia are often linked to creation stories, ancestral beings and land navigation. High points like Mt Walsh were often used for navigational markers or ceremonial sites. Aboriginal people had an intimate understanding of their landscape, using prominent landmarks for orientation during seasonal movements. The summit may have been a meeting point or a spiritual place, though its ruggedness might have limited regular visits. The surrounding dry eucalypt forest and rocky outcrops would have supported wallabies, possums, goannas and birdlife, which were important food sources. There are likely many caves and overhangs that exist within the mountain, and these would likely have been used for temporary shelter or storytelling through rock engravings. Some mountains in Aboriginal culture are believed to be places where spirits reside or where dreaming stories took place. And it's possible that Mt Walsh was part of oral traditions passed down by elders, even if these stories haven't been widely recorded. It makes sense that any person who visits the mountain is impressed by its sheer size and scale. Whether from the present or those who visited the mountain in the past, it's hard to ignore the compelling power of nature. If a mountain can have such an impact and an impression on the human mind, what greater things exist in the universe which should rightly capture our imagination and our hearts?